Wernham also emphasized this point, that the great central point of our osteopathic technique is tactile discrimination, but it must be backed by the physiological interpretation of the basic sciences, which are peculiar to osteopathy. It's often said that there's no new osteopathic anatomy or osteopathic physiology. But it's our interpretation of that that's important, and that's what makes it different. He says we have our own principle, and these must be adhered to. And he says it's very unfortunate that in his day, and I don't think it's changed now, and it wasn't exactly the same in Still's day and in Littlejohn's day, that many practitioners attempt to base their manipulative techniques on a medical basis. And you can't do that.
My suggestion is that for the strength and to preserve the strength of osteopathy, we need to cherish the fringe. We need to look at the stuff that is not being done by everybody else. That base our work on osteopathic principles. Go away and look at other ideas. Don't keep trying to pretend that you want to medicate left, right, and centre, that you want to be a medic. I don't want to be a medic. I never did. Our patients, the reason they're patients, they're not clients, they're not customers, is they need to be patient. We need to be patient. We can't rush care. Osteopathy is slow. You build a practice by being patient and having patience. You practice on your patience. You practice patiently. Graduation is a bare minimum. There is so much more life in osteopathy.
And in Littlejohn's writings, again and again and again, they defined life as vibratility. Vibratility. Life at its heart, underneath everything else, was vibratility. And why did they feel that life was vibratility? Why was this again and again? Because if you look at a cell in the 1890s or the 1910s, there was no evidence that a cell was vibrational in its nature. Yet this was something they were very clear about. The life force, the vital force, is vibratile, it's vibratory. Mr. Wernham said in a lecture that he thought homeopathy was one of the most interesting alternative therapies because it was vibratory in its theory. And he felt this meant it probably was something to it. Now, this vibratory nature of the cell, why did they think it was vibratory? What was their intuition that made them feel this? Well, they felt it was vibratory because, of course, everything else is. Absolutely any phenomenon you can think of is vibratory in nature.
At very best, I think an osteopath doing what they're supposed to be doing is trying to help facilitate the self-healing mechanisms that a person possesses. If the person doesn't possess the ability to improve, probably not much you're going to provide is going to be much benefit, right? So with that said, basically, when we're dealing with this vitalistic idea that we are more than just a collection of physical bits and pieces, right? We are an intelligently designed and created and organized system that has to have a certain amount of vibratility. Was a good word that Littlejohn had used. Andy reminded us of that. That life is motion, and that when that's manifesting itself properly, particularly in somebody who's having a challenge of some sort, the options are basically either a cure will manifest, the person will heal, the baby will heal, and it will just no longer be an issue. Or in some cases, the work that you're doing now may prevent anything from becoming an issue, or may prevent the worsening of something or something like that. Or you may get palliation. When you have a scenario where the trauma or whatever the issue is greater and is beyond that person's unique vitality to correct or to fix, you may be able to help improve the quality of life.
Now, we know that obviously spinal canal, lots of membranes, dura, CSF through the middle, Baxton's plexus and so on. So there's a very big hydrostatic free-flowing dynamic through there, with some CSF trickling out on your nerve roots and things like that. But as you spinally oscillate, if you imagine that you've got the spinal canal altering its relative relationship to itself, so you either have big movements, small movements, etc. So as the little John spinal oscillations driven by that anatomy adapts, so the fluid pressure rings around the external cord, but also within the CSF cord itself, that's all going to alter. So the more that we look inside this tubular system, so we have our bony ring, which is moved by our muscles, but the purpose of the bony ring is therefore to get regional fluid dynamization. So depending on how your spine oscillates, the fluid then becomes either more viscous, less viscous, more turbulent, or less turbulent.